This is Tanya Pearson interviewing Miss Guy on October 28th, 2016 in New York City for the Women of Rock Oral History Project. Thank you very much for having us and for participating. So this is an oral history. It's a personal and professional biography. And it's sort of like I tell everyone, it's like a this is your life kind of thing. So if you could talk a little bit about your childhood and where you grew up.
I grew up in Southern California, and I, was the typical Southern California child of the late 70s, and, all through the 70s, really. I liked skateboarding, I loved rock music, and I loved the beach. I still do. I had a very sort of ordinary, of course.
No, monkey.
Monkey. I had sort of what I seemed like a typical childhood. 5 siblings, 4 brothers
5.
and 1 sister. And my parents are really cool. My dad was in a couple of bands. He was in a 60s surf group called the Centurions, who were well known on the West Coast, but not really, I don't think, anywhere else, when he was like a teenager. And then years later, Quentin Tarantino used one of his songs for Pulp Fiction. So that was exciting for him. And he made some good money. And then he had a band in like 70, 71 that toured with Ike and Tina Turner, which is pretty cool. And he played with the Byrds and some other late 60s, early 70s acts.
So you came from a musical or creative household?
Yeah, there was always, rock music playing, and all my older brothers played instruments, and they had local bands. And I wanted to be in music, and I started, taking piano lessons, and my dad was trying to teach me guitar, but I just got frustrated because I don't necessarily like to learn how to do something. I like to just know how to do it and figure it out on my own. So I got frustrated and I gave it up, and I wish I had stuck with it, but it took me a while before I felt confident enough to get into music on my own. And that was sort of thing growing up. All my siblings were so beautiful and very beachy and tan and just gorgeous bodies, and I felt sort of like the odd duck, like sort of strange looking, and I don't know. I was sort of I guess envious of their beauty growing up. Not in a weird way, like, we all got along and it was all fun, but I couldn't get tan easy. I would just burn and peel, and they were all tan and beautiful, blonde hair, and, good bodies and shirtless. And I was always like white and skinny and afraid to take my shirt off in front of people, like just shy in school. I hated changing for gym. But anyway, once I got to be about 14 or so, I discovered like Adam and the Ants and Culture Club and a lot of English bands that sort of, turned me on to a whole new world of like wearing makeup and dressing up. And so then I finally felt like I found a way to express myself, and with a little bit of confidence.
Can I go back a little bit?
Yeah.
Where are you are you like middle child or youngest?
I'm second to youngest.
Okay, second to youngest.
Everyone else is older.
And all brothers?
No, I have 1 sister.
Oh, okay. And what was your relationship in school with your peers, like before high school? I mean, you said you always kind of felt like the oddball in your family. Was it the same at school? Did you?
Yeah, I got teased a lot. I mean, I always had quite a lot of friends, and mostly girls. And I had a couple of guy friends, but a lot of the boys, like for example, I in elementary school I had long kind of hair, and all the boys had short hair. And then the summer after 6th grade, when we were all going into junior high, I got into one of my older brothers brought home like a bunch of new wave records, so he and I got really into that. We chopped our hair short. I put sun in on my hair that summer, so I went back to school that year and had short bleached hair, and all the boys had grown their hair out over the summer and had like the surfer hair that I had in elementary school. So I got teased for having long hair in elementary school, and then in junior high I got teased for having short hair because all the boys had grown their hair out into feathered.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can't win with these fuckers, you know? So fuck them. But I had friends, and I enjoyed school for the most part. There were a couple of years that I didn't love, probably like 8th grade and 10th grade or something. I don't know. But then by 11th and 12th grade, I knew that I was like gonna get out of that town and do something different, and I was just like, fuck everybody.
Yeah.
I used to dress really wild to go to school just to antagonize the kids and the teachers. And it got to the point where, by my senior year, where my friends would dare me to wear something to school, and I would do it. Oh, you know, wear this wig, wear this bustier, wear these heels, and I would do it. And you know, at that point I just didn't care if people yelled at me or in the halls or threw stuff at me. It was kind of, I felt like that was actually a good thing. I didn't want to be accepted at that point, you know.
Huh. And I read in the Huffington Post that you knew at the age, this is a quote, I knew at the age of 4 or 5 that I wanted to be a performer because of my love of music. When I was growing up, I was very shy and didn't know how to pursue putting a band or performance together. So it seems like you were extroverted in some ways, like you would go to school dressing weird, but did you not have the self-confidence to actually like put a performance together or get a band together? Or
Well, you know, at the time I didn't have any knowledge of instruments, and I think at the time when I was a child I was really obsessed with, you know, a lot of singers like Bowie and Elton John and Cher, but I also was obsessed with Ace Frehley from Kiss, so I kind of always thought I was going to be a guitarist. And I liked holding a guitar, and I still do, but I don't play a guitar on stage. You know, I think I've done a couple of things with, you know, for fun, like one little hitting a note or something, but nothing major. But I think secretly I knew I always wanted to be the front man, and so at the time I was just like too shy to sing in front of anybody, and all my siblings and my dad are so talented, and I felt inferior. So I felt like I need to just go away from this and find a whole new world and find people that I can click with, and that's what happened in New York, you know, eventually. But I was shy. I'm still shy, but I was just I don't know. I think that the outrageous, what I thought was outrageous at the time, looks that I would wear to school, that gave me some kind of confidence, you know, in a weird way. Whereas when I was just like trying to be like all the other boys, especially, you know, in elementary, I was just like a little typical skateboard Southern California kid, except I had long hair and I was kind of femmy looking, and you know, nobody had the name Guy in those days, so I used to get made fun of for my name. It was like, I think all my school years there was one other guy that I remember in high school, but so I got called gay, girl, like you know, and so there was a lot of things that sort of probably made me want to, you know, crawl under a rock. But I just at some point I started thinking, well, you know, figure out a way to make yourself happy. So dressing up was something that made me happy, and it still does. I like putting on makeup. It's fun. I like, you know, going on stage and looking you know, a certain way, and it gives me a bit of confidence, I think, you know. I have no interest, I've never had any interest in going on stage with no makeup or, you know, dressed like in my day clothes. Although there are times where I'm like, ugh, you know, I have to get ready. It takes me a certain amount of time to get ready to put my stage look together. And I always think, why can't I just be happy going on stage, you know, in my street clothes and no makeup and sunglasses? But I'm not, you know.
So when you, well, this is skipping ahead a little bit. It's not going very chronologically right now.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask you about, do you take on like a different persona when you're on stage? I mean, is that a performance? Like, you said that you dress up, but personality-wise, are you kind of somebody else when you're performing?
I think everybody is to some degree.
Mm.
For me, I don't think I could do what I do on stage if I was, you know, up there in my day look.
Yeah.
So putting on the stage look sort of allows me to be a fool. Whereas I think, you know, normally I'm too shy to just be a fool on my own, you know.
Yeah.
Some people can turn it on and off, you know, any time of the day. Lady Bunny is like the life of the party, in or out of drag. Of course she prefers to be in drag, but, you know, I'm not like that. Like, I need to be, like, if I'm dressed up and I go to a party, I can mingle and schmooze and talk to people and not feel like introverted.
Mm-hmm.
But if I go to a party with no makeup on and just casual, I feel a little more quiet and shy, you know, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Were your parents always supportive of your kind of crazy dressing? Oh no. Okay, because you said they were cool.
Well, they were cool. Well, they are cool. But you know, my mom was always pretty okay with it. I used to help her and my sister with getting dressed and pick out outfits for them and help them with their hair and makeup and paint my mom's nails and my grandmother's nails when I was really young. And then when I started doing it myself, I think my mom probably was just like, you know, she probably knew it was coming, but you know, she didn't say much. My dad didn't like it at all. He got really upset for the first couple of years, and then he finally gave in to it and let me do what I wanted with dyeing my hair and piercing my ears and wearing nail polish and shaving off my eyebrows and whatever else I did, because I got decent grades in school and I'd never gotten any kind of trouble. You know, I mean, I would ditch school or do, you know, things and go to the beach, but I usually would just ask my mom and she would write me a note. So I didn't even have to ditch school like in a bad way. So, you know, I mean, I went to parties, weekend parties, and drank and did things I wasn't supposed to that my parents didn't know about, but I didn't do anything bad. I mean, some of my siblings got into some really bad trouble. So I always felt like, well, I've never had, and still to this day, knock on wood, I've never had any trouble with the police. I don't even think I've ever had a ticket, much less been arrested. So I thought, you know, I told my dad one day, I was like, I get decent grades and I've never been in any kind of trouble. I think I should be able to dye my hair blue. And he's like, you know what, you're right. So, yeah, but you know, he had trouble with it in the beginning, you know, with the piercing of my ears and the makeup. And then later on, when I was living in New York, you know, it was pre-internet. So what I was doing when I started working in bars and doing drag performances and going by the name of Miss Sky, no one in my family ever heard of it, because the only way you would ever know is if something was in a magazine, and I knew no one in my family was getting the paper magazine or Interview or anything like that, the magazines I would be in once in a while. But my cousin, actually, in the mid-90s, I was in LA for a DJ gig, and she goes, so when did you start going by the name of Miss Sky? She said that in front of my mom and my sister. And I was like, how did you even know? And she goes, I have a subscription to Paper Magazine. And I was like, ah. But then fast forward later to the internet and everything, then everybody in my family could see everything about me. And at that point I didn't care. But when I first the Toilet Böys first made a CD, I was so proud, and I sent it to my parents. And my mom liked my music. She came to see us play in LA and San Diego a few times, and my dad never came to see us play, unfortunately, but he doesn't like crowds, he never has, so I kind of got it. But the first CD I sent them, my nieces and nephews were like, "Oh, let me see Uncle Guy's CD, I want to see." And I was in ripped fishnets and, my chest, holding my jacket open, and, high heels and the whole bit. And my dad said to my mom or whatever, "Don't let the kids see that." And I always thought that was kind of odd. I don't remember who told me, maybe my sister or something, but I thought, or maybe my mom, I don't know, it doesn't matter, but I just thought, that's so weird. Like when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, I had Kiss records and Bowie records and, Boy George records when I was 14, and, he never said anything. I just thought that was weird. But, so yeah, I don't think he's fully ever embraced, who I am, especially with the visuals. I mean, he loves me and we have a relationship and I love him and all of that. But, and he's very funny, but he's really conservative and, religious and things that I'm not. And so we just don't discuss that. And we get along fine. But I think if he had his way, he would want me to be a Republican Christian married with kids.
Yeah.
Or married multiple times with kids from different wives. That seems to be acceptable, but, anyway.
When did you, okay, I guess I'm curious, were you expected to go to college after high school, or?
No.
Because did you move to New York right after you graduated?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
and right after high school, me and my best friend came to New York. I had planned on going to college up until about the 9th grade, and not because my parents were expecting it, because none of my siblings went to college, so none of us were expected to do. I don't know what the expectations were really from my parents. I think that they just wanted us to live a simple life, sort of, I'm guessing, and so there was they weren't pushing any of us to do anything, and so, but I wanted to go to college, and then after about 9th or 10th grade, I was like, I don't want to go to school anymore, I'm not learning anything here, I think I'll learn more being on my own and, just diving right into life. So, that's and then in 11th and 12th grade I realized I wanted to come to New York instead of LA, and so I came and never went back.
Why did you decide on New York?
I had no reason other than I was in 12th grade and my best friend and I somehow got invited to a party in LA that Malcolm McLaren was doing. And we would go to LA on the weekends and get dressed up and go to underage clubs and go shopping on Melrose, and started seeing bands a lot in LA at about 16. And so we ended up going to this party that Malcolm McLaren was having at his hotel, and we met him, and he said, he loved the way we looked, and he said, "Have you guys ever been to New York?" And we said no, and he said, "You should go to New York, they would love you there." So this was about spring of our senior year in high school, and the next day, or whatever, back at school, we were like, "We're going to New York. Malcolm McLaren said we should go to New York." So then we graduated a few months later, and then a few months after graduation, we got ourselves together and came here. And the first night out, we went out dressed up and we met a bunch of people and got into clubs for free, and we got treated like stars, so we were like, this is amazing, drank for free. And it wasn't long after that I started working in clubs, and so it was just fun, we were living a really glamorous life at 18 years old.
What were you doing to support yourself?
Well, I was working at Tower Records during the day, and then going out every night. And then about 6 months, within 6 months or a year of living here, I got a job at a gay bar on St. Mark's called Boy Bar, and started performing there and working there. And, so then that led to other nightclub gigs. I wasn't DJing or anything yet, I was just doing like drag performances. And then that segued into me performing live, but pre-Toilet Böys. So it was a good learning experience and great. I learned a lot working at Boy Bar and doing those drag shows. And there was about 4 or 5 of us that did the shows every week. And they were all great. And they were true, like, you know, really, I wasn't really interested in being like a drag queen on the scene.
Yeah.
But I liked dressing up, and it was really good learning how to handle being on stage in front of an audience without actually opening my mouth or saying anything into a microphone. Because it was like, it helped build up my confidence, and I learned how to become a performer, I think, you know? So it was a whole different ballgame once I started the band. I mean, it was like I had to kind of relearn, but at least I wasn't stepping on stage for the first time and singing, and, you know, it was a gradual thing. But the drag performances, I got to experiment a lot and do a lot of silly things, and it was fun. And it was stuff that I incorporated into the rock and the Toilet Böys, and it was good. It was like school to me. It was, you know.
That was college.
Yeah.
And was that when you came up, was Miss Guy your stage name when you were doing the drag shows? So
Yeah.
okay.
That's how that name came about. I never had any interest in being called Miss Guy. I always just wanted to go by Guy, like, you know, because I was really obsessed with Cher. I mean, I still am. Who am I kidding? But when I was a child, she was my first, before Elton or Bowie or Kiss or anybody, it was Cher, because she was on television, and I was just obsessed with her outrageousness and her beauty, and it was such a unique beauty, you know, and so glamorous, and the Bob Mackie costumes and the makeup and the hair and the nails, everything. I was just, I mean, my mom and I still laugh to this day, because she said when I was really little, we'd be somewhere and I'd be like, we have to get home, Cher's gonna be on. Like, I knew when she was coming on TV, and I never missed it. So I thought, oh, I just want to go by Guy, like Cher. And then when I started doing the drag shows, before my very first drag show, Matthew Caston, who put the shows together, he said, you need a name. And all the other queens that worked there had names like female names, you know. And I didn't want a female name, like I didn't want to be, he suggested a few, and I just thought, I don't want to be like 30 and having someone call me, you know, Sally on the street or whatever. That's not a name, but, you know, I just thought, so how can I make this? And I thought, oh, Miss Guy, you know, I can deal with that. I thought it was kind of funny, and he loved it. And so I thought, oh, once I'm done with this, no one will ever even hear the name Miss Guy again. And so I was wrong about that, I guess. But that's how that name came about. Not much thought went into it, really. But I just knew that I didn't want to be, you know, a certain age and being called a woman's name.
Yeah, Sally.
Sally. Although that's not
very
a
popular drag name, Sally.
Yeah. So.
I feel like when you read little summaries about people online, or, you know, musicians, there are all these gaps. Because Toilet Böys, your first show was opening for Debbie Harry.
Yeah.
Is that true? Okay. She was performing with her own band at a club that you worked at?
Yeah.
Okay. So had you already built kind of a name for yourself, and people knew who you were? And so you had kind of a following already?
Yeah.
Or it's like, how do you get a gig like that, besides you work there?
Well, there were several different waves of how I was becoming known on the New York scene. You know, it was like started with the late '80s boy bar drag stuff, and then you know, because at the time there weren't a ton of there were very, you know, there were a handful of drag queens in New York and LA and San Francisco, really. And so the New York drag queens were very unique. Everyone had their own look and their own identity. So my look was the sort of thin, pretty blonde. I mean, I'm not saying calling myself pretty, but I was like the sort of foxy blonde, you know, so I looked good, you know, and I was always in high heels and wore makeup every day. And you know, I was 19 years old. I was living it full time, you know, and wore makeup to work every day at Tower Records, and I loved it. It was like a freedom for me to be able to just live my life like that every day. So I would get mentions in magazines from time to time, or photos, and it was always very exciting. But then in the early '90s, I started doing more, and then I started DJing, and that really kind of caught on for me in a big way, and I was getting tons of DJ gigs and getting write-ups as a DJ, and you know, that was exciting because it wasn't like me being lumped in with like a drag scene or anything. It was just my own thing, and I felt like it was a more creative outlet, DJing, and I love music, and I loved being in control of the music at clubs and bars. And then we started Squeezebox, and that really blew up, and that started getting me, you know, known outside of New York. And I started traveling quite a bit then. And so the thing with Debbie just happened because she liked Squeezebox.
Okay.
And we knew each other, but not well. And I think, oh yeah, no, I didn't have the Toilet Böys because that was my first Toilet Böys show. And so she didn't know, later on she became a fan of the band, but at that point she didn't know, she just knew me. And so we went on, and we were pretty horrible, I'm guessing. And you know, she wasn't there when we played, and I was happy about that. And then she didn't see us again. I don't think she saw us for a few more years, a couple of years, after we had gotten together and really sort of figured out our thing and came together as a band. So I was happy that a lot of people that I, you know, admire didn't see us when we were sort of pulling it all together, because we sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people probably say that we still suck, but we got our shit together, and it kind of really became like this unified thing, visually and sound-wise. So yeah, but that's how that happened. There was no, I mean, I may have had the show booked for myself just to play there, and then she may have been added on the bill as the headliner. It was, you know, it wasn't like a typical show where they, you know, there's the pecking order and everything. In those days it would be like, you know, Debbie would come do something at 11 o'clock at night, and then the Lunatics would play at 1 a.m. and then, you know, Lady Bunny would do a drag show with the house band at 2 a.m. So it wasn't like, but at the night that we played with Debbie, I went on at like midnight, and she went on at like 1 a.m. or something.
Oh, okay.
So it was like, you know, proper like opening act and then the star.
Yeah.
And she was great that night, of course.
Oh, I'm sure. And how did you so when you put the band together for that show, did you get friends together, or?
Yeah.
Like, did you intend from that point on to be the front person of a rock band, or was it just supposed to be this fun thing?
Well, I always wanted to have a band, and I felt like that was my do or die moment. I thought, if I don't put a band together now and perform at this party that's really popular, that's my party that I'm the DJ at, that I helped start, then I'm never going to do it. And so I had a roommate at the time who played guitar a little bit, and he introduced me to my drummer, who we still play together, Eddie. And he knew of a bass player, and then we found another guitarist who was friends with my roommate. And that was that show. I think that was the lineup. I don't remember. Yeah, that was it. And so we rehearsed for a few times and did mostly covers. We did 5 songs, and we did all covers except we wrote one original for that night called Squeezebox Baby. And so I didn't know if that lineup was going to ever play again. It was just, in my mind, I was just thinking of this one night. It was very important to me, and it was very special. And the name Toilet Böys wasn't a band name that I was sort of thinking I wanted. It just sort of happened. And I put Miss Guy in front of it because I thought, well, people know who Miss Guy is, but no one knows who the Toilet Böys are. And I thought it was just for the one-off, and when I figure it out from there, I'll think of another band name. But then we got a really good response that night, and we got more bookings at other clubs. And they booked us as Miss Guy and the Toilet Böys, so then I was like, I guess I have to keep this name. And again, stuck with another name that wasn't my first choice. But it all sort of worked, I guess, in some way, some weird way. But then, you know, because some of the musicians that were thinking it was just that one-off, like the bass player never was like, I want to be in a band with these guys. He was in another band, and he was doing it as a favor. So he played a few shows with us, but he kept saying, you guys have to find another bass player, I can't do this. Years later, when we started doing really well, he was always calling me and being like, hey, can I play bass for you guys? Because we, like, you know, went way above and beyond his band at the time. But I loved it. When we got solidified as a lineup, I really loved that lineup. And that's the classic sort of lineup, I suppose, for lack of a better word. But, you know, that was, it all came together very nicely. And I had a lot of different guitar players and bass players along the way until we got to the final lineup. And those guys were all in other bands, and so they were just sort of helping me out. None of them were going to be permanent members. And then I think probably most of those guys at some point or another came back to me over the years and were like, if you ever need me to play with you, like, but at that point it was just like us 5 and that was it, you know. But it was, that's sort of how it began.
Mm. And you said you never really learned to, you didn't play any instruments or anything. Did you always know that you would sing? Like, was singing something that you enjoyed, not just performing, but...
Oh yeah, I like singing. I just figured, well, at that point when I started the Toilet Böys, I knew I was going to be the singer.
Okay.
Because there was nothing else that I could do. You know, I mean, I'm not afraid to mess around with an instrument at rehearsal or something. And in those early Toilet Böys shows, I tried different things. I played a drum, like I had a drum on either side of me for one song that I did sort of like Grace Jones in her one-man show. Simple stuff. I tried the tambourine, I hated that. I said never again. And then at one point when we were first starting out and getting our whole act together, my guitarist Sean would breathe fire. So at the time, he would hand me his guitar at the end of this one song, and I would go up on the drum riser and put my foot on the bass drum and, you know, strum the guitar. It was just sort of a big kind of outro to this song while he was breathing fire, and I would just hit a couple of notes. And then after that, he fixed his guitar so that I would light the end of his guitar on fire and he could breathe fire off the end of his guitar. So that's the extent of my playing instruments on stage.
I have a lot of questions like about the band and it seemed like you got really successful very quickly.
Yeah, I think.
And you recorded on a ton of different labels, like, So I guess
Yeah.
if you could just talk a bit about that time period, the beginning, and what it was like playing more shows, getting more popular. Why did you record with so many record labels? And
Well, once it started kind of snowballing for us, and we were filling clubs in New York, and bands were asking us to play with them, like bands that I loved in New York at the time, like Degeneration and Lunatics and Karen Black, and people started coming to our shows and writing about us, and we started getting out of town bookings, and that was all very exciting, and it happened pretty quick. And then we got an offer we did some recording, and basically we were just recording demos, and we got an offer to release a CD, an EP. No, we put out a vinyl, like a 10-inch on this guy's label, who was our manager at the time. He had a little label, and we did that, and then we got the offer to do the EP on another label from the West Coast, like a punk indie label, and I didn't feel like those recordings were ready. He wanted those 5 or so recordings that were demos, and I was always trying to be a perfectionist, which is never really a good thing. And an artist friend of mine gave me some really good advice at that time, and he said, you just have to get it out there.
yeah,
And I still remember that, and it was such good advice, because I thought, okay, let's just, this is good. I never thought they were entirely finished or as good as they could have been, but I was just like, let's get it out there. And then we started getting lots of reviews in magazines, and that led to West Coast tour dates. And so then nothing was ever official with any of these labels. We would just have these different labels asking, oh, do you want to do a 7-inch with us? Yeah, sure, whatever. We were just like, yeah, to anything. And then we got signed for real, and in America, and that was just a year of hell, and before we were finally released from that deal. And then
was
we
that
started,
Lookout Records, or was that
No.
a different one?
No, that was I don't even want to say the.
Oh, okay.
But
Oh yeah, I guess that's mean.
well, they were, the owner was such a prick.
I just I didn't know if
hated
it was like a major label or a smaller label.
It was an independent label, but it was a major independent
Oh, okay,
label.
okay.
And the president who signed us, loved me, thought I was a star, didn't want to fuss with my look. He thought everything was working and good. And then, but the owner never liked me, never liked us, hated me. And so we were kind of in limbo for like a year. I mean, other than we did some touring on our own, no tour support. And we got a lot of press just because we were press worthy, because at the time, in 1999, there weren't a lot of bands that were that exciting visually, or put on like a super dynamic show. So we were just getting press without the help of a publicist or a label buying press or anything. And they never they thought, the president thought it was great, but the owner was just like, he didn't get it. Like, there was a full page photo of us in Interview magazine that Ellen von Unworth shot, and it was like major, and the owner of the label tore it out of Interview and put a post-it on it, on me, that said and left it on the president's desk saying, I thought he was gonna stop with this fag shit.
Oh.
And it's like, really, we're full page, photo in Interview magazine. Like, what other of your artists have a full page in Interview? So then after that, the president got fired, and then they cleaned house, and then it was over. And it was great once it was over, because then we got a song. Our video was in the top 20 on MTV's, and we toured and got tons of press and did quite well, on an underground level. But they took notice for sure, and I think that they probably realized that wasn't a great decision to let us go.
Yeah.
But they were horrible. the president was nice, but the label sucked. But so then we had UK labels wanting to release stuff, and the thing that was actually our first official release was our own label we started.
Mm-hmm.
That was never really a label.
That Squeezebox?
No, that was
Records,
Master
or?
Plan.
Okay.
Squeezebox Records was the thing that Michael Schmidt, who started Squeezebox, we did some sort of recording that first year with a bunch of different artists. It was pre-Toilet Böys, and that's what that was. Oh, and then when we did our very first EP, I forgot about this one. That was something that, I don't know. Anyway, we didn't have a label, and I asked Michael, can we just call it, say this is a Squeezebox Records release? And he's like, yeah, sure. So that's why that was called Squeezebox Records. But no, there was never really a real label for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then even after we broke up, we had a couple of releases happen in the last 10 or so years, and on different labels that I don't know how they came about. People approach us and we'll say yes or no.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been on a lot of labels.
Huh. But you were never approached by like a big major label or anything, even though
We were,
you had all that?
We had a period in about there was about a good year where, major labels were coming to see us and taking us to dinner in LA, and nothing ever panned out.
Was it something that you would have been or were interested in?
I was.
Yeah.
I feel like at the time that's what we all wanted, but then as time went on, maybe other guys, I don't think, other guys in the band wanted like a major label or wanted to be more than what we were, They were happy being like at the top of the underground playing, clubs and around the country or around the world. And I always wanted more.
And did you need to supplement your income? I mean, did you have to have other jobs outside of just performing?
No.
You were your bandmates. You were able to support yourself through music at that time?
Yeah, I was. But I still DJ'd. I never stopped DJing during those days. I wanted to, but I did not. I kept working, and but I, turned down a lot of work so that the band could go play shows and tour and stuff. Mm-hmm. And the drummer, he was a graphic artist at Sony Records, so he did a lot of their artwork for the albums, or the CDs rather. And so yeah, I think the other guys had odd jobs here and there, like working the door at a club, or and we all kind of threw parties in various places in New York when we were in town. But I've never really had a legit job.
Oh no.
Or a day job since my Tower Records job, which was my first job in New York. But otherwise, I've only ever made a living working in nightclubs and DJing and band stuff.
Huh.
So it's not a bad. I have nothing to complain about.
Yeah, no. I always ask the job question. I mean, so many people have done so many odd jobs before, so I'm always just curious.
Yeah.
And it just seems so different. It seems harder to make a living just doing music now.
Oh
maybe,
God.
Yeah, than it was
now
back
more
then.
than even it was. In the '90s, it was possible.
Yeah.
And you could, living in New York wasn't super expensive, so you could go on tour for 4 weeks around the country in a van or 2 vans and make some money.
Mm.
But now it's harder and harder to get people out to support live music. I mean, when you're at a certain level, but yeah, it's just a whole different world now. People can watch stuff online.
Yeah, do you think that's part of it? I mean, because you said when you went back and visited your family and they didn't know about the Miss Guy thing and your friend had read about it in a magazine, I mean, just how long it took back then to get information, but I think maybe shows were more like events then.
They certainly were.
There was anticipation involved, and now...
You didn't see these people every day, online and all over the place. it wasn't oversaturated like it is now with social media and online and YouTube and, you know, going back to when I was a child in the 70s, and I started seeing concerts at 8 years old. My parents, I would go see Kiss or, you know, Aerosmith or whoever. I saw everybody. But in those days it was really an event and really special. And there was all of the stuff leading up to a concert was really special. Like, tickets go on sale on, so you were anticipating that, and then you went and got your tickets, then you waited for the concert. And I've told friends that are much younger than me that don't know about what it was like in those days, you know, you only ever saw your favorite rock bands in magazines and when you looked at their records and once in a while on TV, because it was pre-MTV, so you didn't even see videos all the time. You would see them on like whatever music specials or whatever shows, you know, they would sing one song. The only time you ever got to see them live and move was in concert, and so that was just such a special, magical time. And you know, I love the internet and all of that. I love having access to anything at any time. You know, I want to buy this song at 4 a.m. and you can just click a button and you buy it, you know. But it just doesn't seem to be as magical now with everything being everywhere all the time. Instant gratification, which I love instant gratification, but there's something to be said about that sort of waiting for something, and it's exciting and it builds up, you know, excitement. And you know, but I'm not, you know, jaded, and I still go see bands and get really excited about seeing live music, and I see bands that blow me away that their entire time on stage is totally magical to me, you know. But it's just less and less these days, and I don't know if that's because of the way things are now in the internet, or if it's because I'm getting older. But you know, I still love going to shows, and you know, I remember being a kid, my dad would be like, by the time you're 21, you're not gonna want to go see concerts anymore. You're not gonna be. He thought I was just gonna outgrow this whole thing, you know, but I never did.
Whoops.
And I still, you know, I love going to live shows. That's the best part about music for me, as a fan or as a performer, is the live shows, you know. All the other stuff is like stuff you have to do, and it can be fun or interesting, you know, recording, making videos, doing photos, all of that. But the best part of it for me is being on stage, or seeing a band that I love on stage. Come on up.
It's so funny to me hearing you described yourself earlier as an introvert, and I've interviewed other people who I would never think would be introverts, and your favorite thing is performing. It's like, I would think that it would be recording or something, or like writing, or something when you're
all
on
of
your
that's
own.
incredibly dull to me. I find the studio interesting, and it gets better and better each time I do it, but it's really boring. A lot of sitting around, a lot of like, you know, but there's some fun things that you can do in the studio that you can't do on stage, so that's cool. But no, performing, being on stage, that's the fun part, and getting ready for a show. I love all of it. I love touring.
That was my next question, was what has your experience been touring? Because you did a European tour as well, right? So you've done US.
Yeah, we did several European tours and several US tours, and the UK a few times, and Japan. We went all over.
Yeah, and this was all in the late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, like 90... I think we did our West Coast tour, which was our first tour in summer of 97. And then by 98 we were doing the West Coast a lot, and then started touring the States in 99, and went to the UK, played our first show in London in 99, and we toured until 2003 was our last tour, and that was the European tour. And we had a US tour booked that year when we got back, but when we were in Europe, the White Lion fire happened, or the Great White fire in the club that killed some
I
people.
lived in Rhode Island and I forgot
That
the name of the
happened
club.
in a club that we played right before we went to Europe, and it. So when we were over there, when we got back, we were being questioned. Some of us were being questioned by the FBI, and it was really major. And and then of course nowhere in America could you do fire without a fire marshal there, and we never had fire marshals at our shows because I mean unless the club would pay for it, but we never could because we weren't going to spend it was like $1,000 I think to have them be there. So we couldn't do our act anymore, the fire anyway, and so that's when we decided we should just call it quits because half the band was like, well, let's just do it without the pyro, and the other half didn't want to do it without the pyro.
Oh.
So it was just time to take a break, you know. We were all getting on each other's nerves, as happens, you know. But the tours were always fun. We always had a good time, even if we weren't getting along, you know. And people at our shows always seem to like the shows and have fun, and we do put on a fun show, and it's pretty, you know, there's not much else happening like what we do, and I think people like that, you know, and we got some bad press here and there. In the beginning, the first few times we got bad press, I took it really hard and it was upsetting. But then as time went on, I just was like, oh, whatever, it doesn't matter, it's just one person's opinion. You know, you would have, I had somebody say that they loved my voice and compared me to a rock singer who I think is the greatest rock singer ever, and I didn't get the comparison, but I was completely flattered and honored and thought she was wrong. But, you know, I thought, well, that's her opinion on it, that's her take on what I do. And but then someone else, you know, would say the most cruel things, and it was usually directed at me because I was the focal point of the band. So I took a lot of shit from critics when we were getting bad press, but you know, we got good press. So then I started thinking it's all the same. Good press, bad press, it doesn't matter. It's just a person's opinion, and you can't let the good press go to your head, and you can't be wrecked by the bad press. But you know, the first time we went to the UK, we got tons of good press, and you know, they couldn't say enough good things about us. And then the second time we toured there, they were out for blood, and most of the reviews were just ripping us to shreds. And
Oh, I think I only read the first one then.
yeah.
Made rock history with their first visit to London.
Well, yeah.
That's Enemy. I think.
Yeah. That was good, you know, and that was true, I suppose. I guess it's gone down in some of the, I don't know, you know, the lists of like the most disastrous first gigs and things like that. When we're up there, there was one list, and it was up there with like, you know, the Rolling Stones Altamont thing, and all these, The Who, when those 11 people got trampled to death in Cincinnati in the 70s. And there's us, the Toilet Böys, London, you know, when the ceiling caught fire. So it's kind of funny and interesting. It's not necessarily the press I was ever seeking, but it did sort of make rock history to some degree, I suppose. But yeah, that was the interesting day and night in London.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that the room actually caught on fire. I thought you were just saying when you came back, people were worried about the pyro stuff. You actually lit the ceiling on fire.
Yeah, but it wasn't our fault. It was
Yeah.
the club's fault, actually. It was about 1,000 people, and we had gotten some press for 6 months or so before we got to London. In fact, a lot of the magazines really liked us before we even ever played there. So that really helped bring a big crowd to our shows, and we yeah, the club, the promoters asked to see an example of the pyro that we did in our shows. And there was this one part where the guitar players had these things that shot off the end, and they just shot sparks out over the audience, and we did it all over, and there was never any problem, you know. And they said, oh no, we don't want anyone in the audience getting burnt, so make sure you aim them high. Okay, so then at that point in the show, when they did that, there was some netting on the ceiling that caught fire, and the ceilings were really high.
Yeah.
It was sort of like maybe Irving Plaza, you know, like that size, maybe, yeah, and ceilings maybe a little higher, very high. And this netting caught on fire, and it sort of started spreading, but I don't know what happened. Anyway, they had to evacuate. We had to stop playing, and they had to evacuate. The fire brigade came. Everything was cool, and in the end, but when 1,000 people poured out onto the streets, and we went out there, and we were taking photos of people, and you know, signing autographs, and it was kind of like a party on the street, and then that was it. So that was our show. That was our first show in London. All the other shows on that tour went well in other cities, but yeah, so that was our first show in London, and that happened, and you know, it was fine. You know, my couple of my bandmates were freaking out, like, that's it, we're done. We'll never play the UK again. This is gonna destroy us here. And then as soon as we got back to New York, it was like NME wrote about us, and we got a lot of press. We probably got more press because of that than if we had just played a regular show.
Yeah.
But yeah, but we got good reviews about the show and the music without setting the venue on fire in other cities, and yeah, it was good. But then the next time we went back, they were just, you know. But the British press is kind of like that. They'll love you one minute and hate you the next.
Yeah.
So I think we went back and played maybe again, and it was like good reviews again, or mixed, but leaning more towards good. So by that point, I was just like, whatever.
Yeah.
People are just like, they say whatever. Like, you can't make someone like you, and you can't make you know, it's just people are going to say what they want to say. So.
I also wanted to ask about, you've collaborated and worked with a lot of, or maybe they're just high profile to me, but I think they're high profile to everyone. Like Debbie Harry, Boy George, Ramones, Motorhead, Joan Jett. Just I didn't even realize the list was pretty long. How did you make those connections, or like foster those kind of relationships?
Well, I guess they started hearing about us. Some of them, I can't speak for everybody, I don't remember exactly how it all panned out, but we, a lot of those people that we loved and still love started coming to see us play, and then some of them, they liked us and asked us to play with them and do songs with them, recordings with them.
So it really was just like press and...
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, you know, started in New York with like Debbie coming to see us, and Joey Ramone and Dee Dee Ramone coming to see us, and Ace Frehley from Kiss came to see us play, and so a lot of the New York bands that we all worshipped were coming to see us, and multiple times, and you know, I remember I think Debbie was the first big star that came to see us play, and I remember thinking, oh, that's so amazing, and you know, but I knew her, you know, we weren't good friends, but I knew her, and so I thought, oh, she's just coming to see a friend's band play, and you know, I never thought she'll come again, or that we would ever have her sing with us or do anything more, but I was still, you know, excited about that. And then next time we played in New York, she was there, and I wasn't, you know, inviting her because, like I said, we knew each other, but I didn't have her number, I don't think then, and so I wasn't able to call her and invite her. She was just coming on her own, which was like, and that's how it happened with Joey and Dee Dee and Ace. It was just sort of like they were hearing about us, hearing good things, and they started coming to see us on their own. Because I didn't know any of those people at the time to call them and invite them to my shows. So, you know, it was really exciting, and then we started getting offers to open for people, and it was all through sort of word of mouth, I suppose. Because we didn't have a booking agent at the time. I don't think we even ever had a booking agent in America. We did in the UK, Europe, but I don't think we ever did here. I can't remember. But maybe at one point we did. But so yeah, it wasn't like we were being put on these shows because of a booking agent or anything. It was just these people that we were huge fans of were becoming fans of the band, and that was sort of the best thing about the whole experience in that time, was just like literally our three favorite bands, who just happened to be, you know, from New York, Kiss, Blondie, and the Ramones, were liking what we were doing, and it was like you couldn't ask for anything better than that, you know. So that's sort of how that came about.
And I did want to ask, this is kind of a 3 million part question, so are you satisfied with your kind of underground indie cult status? That's always how, I mean, I also don't want to assume that that's what you are, but to me, I've always considered Toilet Böys to be kind of like famous underground kind of band. Are you satisfied with that?
I am, yeah. I mean, you know, you kind of either have to appreciate what you have and acknowledge it and accept it, or be, you know, unhappy or whatever. And, you know, at the time we were working a lot for those 6 years or so, I was always sort of, as stuff was happening, I was very excited and happy about it, but I always was sort of had my eye on the next thing, and always was like wanting more and that next step up. And so I don't think I was enjoying it as much as I could have been at the time, because I was always like sort of thinking about the next thing and the next move and the next, you know, way to sort of become more well known. And I always had sort of the idea that we were gonna sort of flip over to the mainstream, you know. It looked like things were lining up for that to happen, and you know, it didn't. And so that's the story of thousands of bands in you know, music history. So you have to just sort of accept, well, this is how it played out, and move on. And as time's gone on, I've sort of you know, learned to embrace that, because it's a good thing, you know. There's thousands of bands that don't even get that to that level, or get that, have that sort of I don't know the word, you know, impact. We made a small impact all over the world in different cities, and you know, that's in some ways, although I always wanted to be really successful in the mainstream, I sort of never, when I started the band, thought, oh, I never thought it was going to get outside of New York, you know. So in a way, we achieved more than I even ever thought in the beginning. It wasn't until we started getting the ball rolling and we actually started playing bigger shows and making more money and getting press and being on TV, and that I started thinking, oh yeah, like I want superstardom, you know, because I thought it seemed like it was within my reach. But when I started the band, I just thought, oh, play clubs in New York and have fun with our friends and play with the bands like that were playing around that time that I loved, and that was it. I thought that would be really cool. And so once it started spreading outside of New York and outside of the US, I was just like, that's amazing. So now, in hindsight, looking at all of that, it's like, you know, we did do a lot and we did make an impact on an underground level, but that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's significant.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting because you're like this underground band that I feel like you've actually influenced your influences. The people that come to your shows that you've ended up collaborating with are like genuine fans of yours,
Yeah.
which I don't hear that very often.
Yeah, it's a sort of a unique story, our story. I don't know how it all happened. I mean, it just happened, and it's like, I don't know. We made a lot of good friends on the way, and we did a lot of cool things, and, you know, still get to do cool things from time to time, and, you know, there's just no sort of ever explaining how something happens, you know, it just sort of does, and it's great. But yeah, I think that we were just doing what we really wanted to do and what we loved, and what we thought was sort of true, and it sort of spread out and touched people, because, you know, I think I feel like with my image, you know, in the beginning, and playing with some of the rock bands we played with, where we were like, the audience could really hate us, like opening for Motorhead, and, you know, I think and then having these like Motorhead fans come up to us afterwards and like hugging me and wanting to take photos of me, and I thought, you know, because I'm a true rock and roller at heart, and we all were and are in the Toilet Böys, and so I think that true rock lovers can see through an image if it's not something that's maybe up their alley, you know, and because you know, rock has always been about being flamboyant and outrageous, but I think I pushed it really far, like more than a lot of people are willing to do. And it was fun for me, and it is fun for me, but I think that if somebody is a rock music fan, but they're not necessarily that into like outrageousness, they're gonna be able to accept my outrageousness because Toilet Böys are a true rock band, you know. We're not trying to be something that's like popular at the moment, or, you know, because when we were happening, the sort of mainstream rock thing at the time was like baggy jeans and baseball caps and, you know, I don't know, Pearl Jam, or maybe that was happening before us, I don't know, but, you know, Limp Bizkit was popular when we were happening, and, well, I don't know, just
You existed through a lot of phases, like the Limp Bizkit thing, when the mod thing started happening again, like the Strokes and stuff, in early 2000s.
Yeah, that was happening, that sort of started when we were about to finish.
Yeah.
We weren't a part of that, and they weren't a part of what we were doing, and in fact, I mean, that wasn't really anything more than, I think, a sort of, I don't know, that was the mainstream's take on the New York scene at the time, but it really wasn't a scene, you know. They played a couple of times, nobody knew who they were that was on the scene and playing, and so that's sort of funny and interesting, but they're a good band, you know, and I liked the Yeah and some of those other bands that were from that time, but it was funny because after that, then there was sort of emphasis on New York and Brooklyn and what was happening, but they sort of brought that, or made that sort of the focal point, but it wasn't like that was anything happening, or, you know, there was no Brooklyn scene really, and it was just, you know, it's strange how that happened, but I think that happens all the time with bands starting, something, and then, not saying we started it, but all the bands in the late 90s in New York that were like, more well known. Monkey, don't knock anything over.
You can make it.
They were paving the way for other bands to happen in a bigger way, I think.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. It happened in the early 70s, excuse me. And, I don't think Blondie and the Ramones and Television and other New York bands that happened in the mid and late 70s would have happened without the New York Dolls in Wayne County and the Fast and, other bands that were happening in the early 70s in New York. I don't think Kiss would have happened without that early 70s thing happening and paving the way for them,
Yeah.
And, then it keeps going back to the Velvet Underground and whatever, but I think that it's, and none of that, you can't really, see any of that until time's gone by, and then you can look back and be like, you can see how it sort of panned out and played out. But yeah, we were playing at a time that, I don't know if we should have been happening 20 years earlier or 20 years later. We were really in the middle of at this strange time. But I think that also that was the good time, and that's why it happened the way it did for us, good or bad, because of the time, But I personally, I wished I was 10 years older and could have lived in New York in the 70s and early 80s and early 70s, early 80s. I think that really would have been, I feel like that I missed a really special time in New York.
Did you ever feel very alone doing what you're doing when you were doing it?
I don't quite
like your
understand
gender presentation, talking about the early 70s, how like New York Dolls, I think there were more like there were more people expressing their gender or their sexuality in that very specific kind of way.
Yeah.
And it seemed like at that time you were one of the only people that were doing that in the
I think
mid-late 90s.
Pretty much. I mean, Marilyn Manson was happening, but that was different.
Yeah.
He was like more goth and industrial or whatever, and more sort of shock rock. I mean, I felt like his image, and not that there's any reason to compare what we were doing, because it was totally different, but he was outrageous, I was outrageous. He was obviously much more successful than me, but he and I really like him. I think he's really great and smart, and I like that he exists, and I'm glad that he's still doing what he's doing, and I like that he didn't sort of just like do that for a time and then change. It's like that's really him, and I love that. But I think that, I at the time I didn't really give it much thought. I just think maybe I was thinking, I wish we had been in New York and playing in the 70s, because that was what I loved, and we all loved that period, and I am friends with some of the people from that period, and I just thought it would have been so much more fun.
Yeah.
But who knows? I mean, maybe it would have been like, we would have just been hated at that time. I don't know. I don't think we would have been, but everything sort of happens when it's supposed to happen. So we happened when we were supposed to happen. But I did feel at the time, I'm pretty sure that I felt like we were sort of like playing in the wrong era, and now with so much time going by, I feel like, we maybe would have had more mainstream luck, or more luck with bigger success if we had happened later. But I don't know. Who knows? We'll never know.
And I have to ask, even though we talked about it off camera at the beginning, your thoughts and feelings on being included in an oral history of women in rock. because I hope to just kind of expand, you know, or what it means to be a woman in rock beyond just, you know, cis white women or the like 5 or 6 figureheads that get talked about all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in like everybody else outside of that. And yeah, I was talking about how some people refer to you as she, her, and some people he, him, and you know, I wasn't sure just any of your thoughts on that.
Well, actually, I thought when you asked me to do this, I was thinking that I was gonna just be talking about all the women in rock that I love.
Oh no, you can do that too.
Well, I think I probably have.
Yeah, I mean throughout the
Cher,
interview.
Debbie, and, you know, but no, I mean I'm thrilled and honored to be included and to be talking about my band, because you know I've always sort of felt like I was an honorary woman of rock, you know, although I don't identify as female, I do understand that my image is, you know, way more female than male, and I've always had an interest and fascination with females. I'm very close with my mom and sister, and all of my friends pretty much my entire life have been mostly girls. And I've always been way more interested in, you know, feminine things, makeup, hair, clothes. I find all the stuff for men really dull and boring and totally uninteresting to me. I mean, I love seeing a man that's dressed really chic and you know, there's a lot you can do with that, and there's a lot of ways to dress for men that are sophisticated and chic and stylish, but I don't feel like that's ever really worked well with me, and I sometimes wish that it did, or that I thought that it did, because there's a part of me that does like that, you know, for like everyday and casual events or whatever. But as far as for stage and music and entertainment, I have no interest in the boy stuff. I like, you know, give me the high heels, give me the makeup, give me the hair, give me the accessories, the glitter, I want all of that. And that's just for me, you know, I don't want my bandmates to do that. And if they wanted to, they could, but they don't want to, so. But you know, that's just for me, and I don't want all of the male rock stars to be wearing glitter and high heels. I think everyone should just do what they love and be themselves, and, you know, have an interest in being somewhat unique. That's all I ever cared about, was having, you know, being thought of as a unique performer and a unique rocker. I didn't want to just be like a run-of-the-mill, you know, singer in a rock band. So that's, I've just sort of been lucky that I've been able to include my lifelong obsession with women and the visuals of women into my performance and the art that I do, you know. And I think that may have had some hindrance in the levels of success that we may have had or didn't have. Who knows? But I just was doing what I loved to do. And so, you know, if some magical genie came to me in those days and said, if you tone it down, if you put on baggy jeans and a baseball cap like Limp Bizkit, you'll be the biggest band in the world, I wouldn't have done it, you know. So I guess being the biggest band in the world wasn't the most important thing to me at the time. It was being able to do what I wanted to do. I never wanted to have a band that had any rules for me personally on how I wanted to present myself. I always wanted to have the freedom to present myself any way I wanted, you know. And if I wanted to tone it down, I did or would have, or, you know, but I never wanted to, you know, that was never something I wanted to do. So I feel like I was able to do what I wanted, and I got what I got.
And that was my last question. You answered another question within the question.
Well, I'm a Gemini, so that happens.
So am I.
Oh,
Yeah. Are you June
Oh,
or May?
June.
I'm a May Gemini. I don't know how different that is.
I have lots of May Geminis that I'm very fond of,
Yeah.
and yeah, I love Geminis.
I'm
Two of my
Gemini
brothers.
rising.
Huh?
I'm Gemini rising.
Oh, you are? What's
I'm a
your
Cancer.
Cancer? I love Cancers too.
I know, so do I. I didn't think we were
Half
supposed
my
to go.
family are Cancers, and you know, several of my closest friends are Cancer.
This is
Gem-
my best friend. I'm like dating a Cancer now. I didn't think I was
Yeah.
supposed to like Cancers.
Geminis and Cancers get along really well. All of my best roommates in my, you know, life have been Cancers. My dad, two of my brothers. So yeah, a lot of one of my bandmates.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm Cancer.
Well,
But yeah, so I'm a
Gemini.
Gem. I subject jump. I'm
Yeah.
all over the place, and
Okay.
I chalk that up to being a
Is there
Gemini.
anything else that you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask, that you wished I asked? I mean, I'm sure, you know, it's like a lot to fit into an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So I try to pick
No, I
things.
mean, if I
and
think
then-
of anything, I'll let you know. But I think that, yeah, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, okay. As long as you feel satisfied. I feel pretty satisfied.
Yeah, I'm satisfied.
You feel good?
Yes.
We're all satisfied.
It's good to be satisfied, isn't
Yeah.
it?